Hi and welcome back! Today's video is about the never-ending struggle to negotiate the phase-out of fossil fuels and how a new approach, like a global climate authority, could finally break this deadlock. Let's begin. We're not failing to phase out fossil fuels because of science. Science is clear. We're not failing because of technology. We have the solutions. Some argument they cannot afford to go first. Others need guarantees, more time, or invoke the need of global alignment. Meaning, after all, we're failing because of politics, governance, and a negotiation system built to avoid responsibility. Countries walk into climate negotiations with completely different incentives. For some, fossil fuels still represent stability, jobs, or national power. For others, phasing out means economic shock or political risk. You can't solve a global problem when the incentives push in opposite directions. When it comes to fossil fuels, the world is still divided. A full phase-out is the option most aligned with climate science, but many countries resist it. They fear economic disruption, rising energy costs, and losing industries that still provide jobs, revenue, and political stability. Some even worry that a rapid transition could threaten their energy security. Others push instead for a phase-down. But even this softer option faces resistance, often from the same economic pressures, strong lobbying by fossil fuel interests, and concerns about affordability and equity, especially in developing nations. The result is a global negotiation trapped between what science demands and what politics allows, or put differently, a language trap. The United Nations climate process has a built-in flaw: the consensus rule. One country can block 194 others, turning every deal into the lowest common ambition. This gives fossil fuel-dependent states the power to weaken or delay action. And that's why the negotiation loop never ends. Each year, the same battles repeat, language gets watered down, and we move from phase out to phase down. With no enforcement and no consequences, everyone waits for everyone else, and progress stalls. In other words, the system is structured to fail just when ambition is most needed. While negotiations stall, the climate crisis accelerates. Emissions keep rising, and we are crossing dangerous tipping points, changes that are irreversible and increasingly unpredictable. Every year of delay makes the transition harder, more expensive, and more disruptive. At the same time, fossil fuels continue to receive massive public support. Despite decades of climate commitments, billions in subsidies still reinforce the very system we claim we want to change. As long as public money props up fossil fuels, real transition will always lag behind the crisis. And this reveals the deeper problem. Climate policy treats this as an emissions issue, but emissions are only the symptom. The real disease is governance, a system that cannot enforce decisions, coordinate action, or correct itself when it fails. This is why progress keeps stalling, and why a different approach is needed. So, what if the real problem isn't a lack of science or solutions, but the absence of a system able to act on them? The Global Climate Authority is designed to do what today's framework cannot: mediate conflicts, monitor real commitments, ensure fairness, enforce consequences, and break deadlocks caused by consensus rules. It brings together independent science, public oversight, real-time monitoring, and legal enforcement under one mandate. Because on a shared planet, responsibility must also be shared. Now let's see how this could finally unlock the fossil fuel phase-out. For countries whose economies, public budgets, and geopolitical influence are still deeply tied to fossil fuels, going first feels dangerous. It can mean losing revenue, power, and strategic leverage, while others keep profiting from the old system. Under a GCA framework, that risk changes. Systemic security replaces blind trust. Commitments are verified, timelines are coordinated, and deviations carry real consequences. The problem is that the current climate system is built on voluntary commitments. There is no reliable coordination, no enforcement, and no protection for those who move first. Yes, early movers can gain advantages, access to new markets, leadership in supply chains, influence over standards. But today, those gains are fragile, reversible, and politically exposed. Under a GCA framework that changes, early movers are no longer gamblers. They become architects of the transition, with structurally protected advantages. And this is how we end up stuck. Everyone waits because in the current system moving first feels dangerous and doing nothing feels safer. In a GCA system, no one goes first alone, and no one can afford to stay behind. By now, one thing should be clear. Most of what we need already exists. The problem is not a lack of tools, ideas, or resources. It's fragmentation, hesitation, and a system that avoids responsibility. A just transition exchange, led by a global climate authority, doesn't reinvent the world. It reorganizes it. It connects commitments to consequences, transitions to fairness, and ambition to accountability. In other words, it turns promises into systems and systems into action. Climate change is often discussed as a technical or political problem, but at its core, it's a human one. Recently, I came across this idea. We all have two lives. The second begins when we realize we only have one. So humanity is still living its first planetary life. The question is whether we enter the second by choice or by collapse. Thank you for watching and thank you for caring. Bye!